Welcome, my family. Today we are looking at the woman who rose from slavery to become a queen. Deep within the labyrinth of the Topkapı palace, a terrified young sultan signs a secret execution order. He is completely unaware that the guards are already marching down the corridor. Not for his enemies, but for him. She stood in the shadows. A grandmother who had traded the lives of her own flesh and blood for the ultimate price. Absolute rule over an empire spanning 3 continents. This is the story of Kösem Sultan, the most powerful woman in Ottoman history. Whose journey began in a slave market and ended in a pool of her own blood. Before she was a ruler, she was Anastasia, born around 1589 on the sun-drenched Greek island of Tinos. She was the daughter of a Christian priest. Her early life was defined by the gentle lap of the Mediterranean waves and the peaceful rhythms of an island village. But in the early 17th century, the Mediterranean was a playground for Ottoman corsairs. At just 13 years old, Anastasia's world was shattered. Kidnapped by raiders, stripped of her identity, and sold into human trafficking, she was transported across the sea to the beating heart of the Islamic world, Istanbul. She was gifted to the imperial harem of Sultan Ahmed I, a young ruler who had just ascended the throne. In the harem, she was given a new name, Mapaker, meaning moon-faced, a testament to her radiant, ethereal beauty. But beauty was a cheap commodity in the Topkapı palace. To survive, she needed intelligence. She quickly mastered Turkish, Islamic law, court etiquette, and the delicate, lethal art of palace politics. Sultan Ahmed took notice. He renamed her once more Kosem, meaning leader of the herd. It was a shockingly prophetic name. She was not just a favorite in the bedchamber, she became Ahmed's closest advisor. During this era, the Ottoman Empire practiced a brutal tradition, royal fratricide. When a new sultan took power, he would execute all his brothers to prevent civil war. Ahmed's own brother, Mustafa, was mentally unstable, and tradition dictated he should die. Kosem, looking to the future and protecting her own unborn sons, intervened. She convinced Ahmed to spare Mustafa, effectively altering the line of succession forever and introducing the concept of the cafes, or the cage, a luxurious prison where princes were locked away until death or ascension. This single political maneuver saved lives, but it sowed the seeds for decades of madness. In 1617, tragedy struck. Sultan Ahmed I died of typhus at the young age of 27. At just 28 years old, Kosem was left a young widow in a court shark tank. What followed was a chaotic game of musical chairs on the Ottoman throne. First came Mustafa, the unstable brother Kosem had saved. His erratic behavior quickly led to his deposition. Next was Osman II, Ahmed's son by another concubine. Osman was ambitious and sought to curb the power of the elite Janissary corps, the military backbone of the empire. It was a fatal mistake. In 1622, the Janissaries revolted, dragged the young Sultan Osman to the fortress of the Seven Towers, and brutally executed him. The empire was fracturing. Rebellion sparked in Anatolia, the treasury was draining, and the central government was paralyzed. Through all the chaos, Kosem watched from the old palace, pulling strings, maintaining alliances with powerful pashas and eunuchs, and waiting for her moment. That moment arrived in 1623. With Osman dead and Mustafa deposed once again, Kosem's own son, Murad IV, was elevated to the throne. He was only 11 years old. An 11-year-old child could not command an empire. For the first time in Ottoman history, a woman was officially appointed as Naibi Sultanate, the regent of the empire. Kösem Sultan was no longer just an influencer behind a curtain. She was the official head of state. She sat behind a latticed screen during meetings of the imperial divan, directing the Grand Vizier, managing foreign diplomacy, and stabilizing a failing economy. She fed the poor, funded charities, and rebuilt alliances, earning the fierce loyalty of the common people. As Murad IV grew older, the psychological toll of his childhood caught up with him. He had watched his brother be murdered, and he grew up in a palace where betrayal was the default language. Murad decided that to rule, he must rule through pure, unadulterated terror. Murad wrested power away from his mother. He banned tobacco, alcohol, and coffee in Istanbul, executing anyone caught violating the law on the spot. He would patrol the streets at night in disguise, personally executing citizens who broke his curfews. Kosem could only watch as the son she had protected turned into a tyrant. Murad's paranoia turned inward, toward his own family. He ordered the execution of 3 of his brothers, Bayezid, Suleiman, and Kosem. Kosem used every ounce of her political capital to protect her last surviving son, Ibrahim, hiding him away from Murad's murderous gaze. In 1640, at the age of 27, Murad IV lay dying, his liver destroyed by illness. In his final moments, consumed by madness, he ordered the execution of Ibrahim, intending to end the Ottoman dynasty with his death. Kosem intercepted the order, saved Ibrahim, and when Murad breathed his last, she led Ibrahim out of his royal prison to face the court. But Ibrahim was broken. Years spent in fear of execution in the cage had shattered his psyche. History would remember him as Ibrahim the Mad. With Ibrahim on the throne, Kosem stepped back into the role of regent. Ibrahim was entirely unfit to govern. He was obsessed with luxury, spending vast fortunes on sables and perfumes, while his concubines dictated state policy. The relationship between mother and son disintegrated rapidly. Ibrahim, manipulated by rivals who feared Kosem's power, exiled his mother from the Topkapı palace. For Kosem, this was the ultimate betrayal. She had saved his life, and in return, he was driving the empire into an abyss. By 1648, the Janissaries, the religious elite, and the public had reached their breaking point. A conspiracy was hatched to overthrow Ibrahim. The plotters needed one thing: the blessing of the matriarch. In a chilling historical moment, Kösem Sultan chose the empire over her own son. She gave her consent to his deposition. Ibrahim was arrested and locked back in his cage. Days later, when loyalist factions attempted a counter-coup, the executioners arrived at Ibrahim's cell with a silken bowstring. Kosem did not stop them. Her own son was strangled to death with her tacit approval. Ibrahim's 6-year-old son, Mehmed IV, was placed on the throne. Naturally, Kosem assumed she would resume her role as regent. After all, she was the Grand Matriarch, the Valide-i Muazzama, or the Magnificent Mother. But she underestimated a new enemy rising within her own walls. The mother of the young King Mehmed IV was a young Ukrainian woman named Turhan Hatice Sultan. Turhan was fierce, ambitious, and utterly unwilling to sit in Kosem's shadow. For 3 years, a cold war raged inside the harem. 2 Valide sultans, representing 2 different generations, fought for the soul of the empire. Kosem had the backing of the Janissary guards, while Turhan had the backing of the chief black eunuch and the palace administration. By the summer of 1651, Kosem realized that Turhan was gaining too much ground. She hatched a final, desperate plot. She would assassinate the child sultan, Mehmed IV, poison his mother Turhan, and replace him with another grandson whose mother was weak and easily controlled. But Kosem's luck had run out. A spy in her inner circle, a servant named Meliki Hatun, betrayed the plot to Turhan. Turhan knew she had hours to act before her child was killed. On the night of September 2nd, 1651, Turhan's loyalists, led by Suleiman Aga, the chief black eunuch, armed themselves and marched through the dark corridors toward Kosem's apartments. The palace erupted into a brief, bloody clash. Kosem's guards were overwhelmed. The conspirators broke into her chambers. Kosem, the woman who had ruled an empire for nearly half a century, hid inside a wardrobe, stuffing her flowing robes into her mouth to muffle her breathing. A piece of her clothing caught in the door. They dragged her out into the moonlight. She fought like a cornered lioness, throwing handfuls of gold coins at them, hoping to create a distraction. But there was no mercy. She was beaten, dragged by her hair through the corridors, and finally, using a curtain cord or the hair of her attackers, the Iron Empress was strangled. When morning broke, the news of her death swept through Istanbul. The city wept. For 3 days, the markets were closed, and a period of mourning was declared for the woman who had fed the poor, but killed her own blood to survive. Kösem Sultan rose from a forgotten captive to become the most powerful woman the Islamic world had ever seen, ruling through fear, brilliance, and blood. But in the end, the very palace system she weaponized turned against her, proving that in the game of crowns, no one is safe from the monsters they create. If you want to dive deeper into the dark secrets of history's most ruthless rulers, hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and leave a comment below on whether you think Kosem was a savior or a villain.